Maybe he's frustrated because Jaden McDaniels and Nikhil Alexander-Walker has been on his ass this entire playoffs, or the fact that he's not looking like the player that we normally see him be. He's definitely hurt out there, but that can only get you so far as an excuse. The Minnesota Timberwolves have been so ridiculous. Like, I'll be honest, I picked against them in the first round and the second round. Welcome back to the Kenny Beecham podcast. On today's episode, we got to talk about the New York Knicks being up 2-0, just 2 games away from making a conference finals appearance. We got to talk about the OKC Thunder, the youngest team in the league, taking a 1-0 series lead over the Mavericks. We got to talk about the C's, and we have an MVP, y'all. Finally, we know it is Nikola Jokic. We're talking about all of that today. Be sure to leave a like, subscribe, go to the audio platforms and give us 5 stars. I like the flow that we have right now. You know, every night, well, not every night, it should be every night, but not every night, I do like these instant reactions to the games that I saw that night. Like, I go on the Kenny For Real channel, boom, here's a 10-minute excerpt of what I saw today, and then you come to the Kenny Beecham podcast for me to get under the layers of the series. You feel me? So you should be, that's me telling you, you should be watching both channels. That's just my opinion. Let's get into it. Let's talk about the New York Knicks, because they are now up 2-0. I am filming this right after they won against Indy, so I don't know what Rick Carlisle is going to say, because I thought in this one, TJ McConnell, Obi Toppin deserved to play down the stretch. And I kind of understand it, right? If you are a head coach, you want to play your best guys, even if those best guys are not the ones that are leading you to success. I thought the majority of the time where the Pacers took that big lead, it was a lot of TJ McConnell. It was a lot of Obi Toppin. It was a lot of Jalen Brunson being out with that injury, first of all. I think that we should probably open with that. But when you see the Indiana Pacers start at 5, kind of get bullied, get out-hearted by Josh Hart and Isaiah Hartenstein, you kind of want to see a guy like TJ McConnell, who I think he played some really good defense on Jalen Brunson, all things considered, because at this point in time, it ain't a single person on earth that feel like he can stay in front of Jalen Brunson. So not playing those 2 energy guys down the stretch might have cost him this one. It was cool to see Tyrese Halliburton come out and have a really good first half, but in the second half, he didn't have those same juices. And it's just so insane to see a guy like Jalen Brunson be as good as he is. I know we've probably talked about this a million times on this channel, but he goes out with his injury at the end of the first quarter, in the middle to the end of the first quarter. And immediately you just see the Indiana Pacers go on this huge run where eventually, I think they were down by 9 points when he went out with his injury. And then going into halftime, they were up by double digits. Tyrese Halliburton's hitting shots. Ben Shepherd won't miss a shot. And then immediately second halves open up. And then Jalen Brunson, the Knicks are running. The atmosphere of Madison Square Garden is back because everybody was like, oh my God, our star player has been playing basically 48 minutes for 3 weeks now. Is it catching up with him? And he still didn't look amazing in that second half as far as the way he was moving, but he was still getting buckets and everything. I thought for sure that the injury was just him getting a knee to the side of his knee, but they said it was actually his right foot. I guess we're going to have to monitor that. The big thing is OG Anunoby going out with what looked like a hamstring. They say it was sore right foot for Jalen Brunson, sore hammy for OG Anunoby. Hopefully that's all it really is, because it would be terrible for one of those 2 dudes to not be at least 90%, not just for this series, because I honestly do believe if actually, I don't know about that. I was going to say if OG Anunoby misses a game or 2 that they should be okay. They should be okay. I mean, they lack the depth, right? Obi Toppin and TJ McConnell are a luxury for a team like the Indiana Pacers, and New York Knicks don't really have that. The one guy that could have been that is Bogi Bogdanovic, but he's going to be out for the rest of the playoff run. Miles McBride had some moments in last series, but so far, not too great. And the only people off the bench that are giving you some type of anything for the Knicks is like Precious Achiuwa. It's a big. So hopefully OG is completely healthy. I don't like the way the offense looked overall for the Pacers in that second half, because I look at a guy like Jalen Brunson. Again, the guy's played 43 plus minutes over the last 3 weeks. And everybody on the Knicks team just having limited stamina. The cardio is ridiculous. Who is it? Josh Hart is averaging over 48 minutes per game in the last 5 games because he had the 53-minute game when they were in the series versus the 76ers. And I just would love to see the opposing team, and because the 76ers didn't do this much either, and the Pacers haven't done this specifically down the stretch, just try to get Jalen Brunson in as many actions defensively as possible. I'm watching the entire clutch time offense for the Pacers, and Jalen Brunson is able to put his hands on his knees because he's guarding Andrew Nembhard. I just would love to see an opposing coach try to take advantage of that. And listen, Jalen Brunson is a 6-foot fire hydrant dude. He's no slouch on the defensive side of the ball. But if anything, if that means that he's just working hard on the defensive side of the ball, then maybe his offense just takes a 3% dip. And that 3% might be the reason you end up winning the game. But these Knicks, man, they fight. Last series, when I was previewing this series, I was like, okay, the offensive rebounding thing that you did against the Philadelphia 76ers, I'm sure you could do it again because, well, they were the number one offensive rebounding team in basketball in the regular season. This is part of their identity. But I thought to myself, and I think I verbalized this on the podcast too, that the Pacers would just be a different team to crash the glass on because hypothetically you crash the glass, you miss this offensive rebound, you got 4 people hitting the glass, and that means it's a fast break opportunity for the Indiana Pacers. That has not been the case. These guys, like the identity of the Knicks is going to be defense, heart hustle, rebounding, right? But they also have a portion of their identity that is able to be molded to what the other team is really doing. They're playing Pacers basketball and winning. Like, this has not been a defensive-oriented series. It just hasn't. The first 2 games has been high scoring, because both teams are matching the pace. They're matching the offense. It's kind of beautiful considering what happened in the last series where some of those games are very grinded out, low-scoring games, and in this one, it's like, hey, Jalen Brunson, give us 43. Hey, Josh Hart, give us 24, a career high in the playoffs. Dante DiVincenzo, of the 8 games, and this is not a real stat, but of the 8 games they played in the postseason so far, I feel like Dante DiVincenzo has hit a very big 3 in like 5 of them. It makes no sense. And like the first part of the 76ers series, he wasn't even good, and he still ended up hitting some really big shots. Who would have thought that the Knicks would be 2 games away from being in the conference finals without Julius Randle? You know, Julius Randle's kind of an afterthought right now. Everything is rolling. I'm sure they'll go against the Celtics, and I know what I believe about that series. We got to get there first. I'm not counting out this. I'm not counting you out, Indy. I'm not counting you out, Cleveland. But I have an opinion about what that series is going to look like. But man, you feel pretty good about what the future could look like for the Knicks if hypothetically you decide to buy a little bit, and Julius Randle is one of the contractual pieces that's in that trade, because everybody is playing phenomenal. Again, a little bit worried about that injury stuff because you have these dudes playing so many minutes. I just have flashbacks of Tom Thibodeau coaching my favorite team and how more than half of the dudes that played under Tom Thibodeau in that stretch were out of the league in like 4 years or just injury prone within 2. So I'm a little bit afraid about that, but the vibes are extremely, extremely high. And part of this is just them playing great basketball in the last day of the season, where there are other teams who decided to try to lose on purpose to play with the seeding. The Knicks said, no, bring us the 76ers, bring us to Miami Heat, whoever it may be. And the basketball gods are rewarding them. They have not had a game this postseason that wasn't like edge of the chair, clutch moment. I think they said that they were 6-1 in clutch in the postseason so far, which is insane to think that they've only played 8 games and 7 of them have been considered clutch games. So shout out to the New York Knicks. I'm very curious to see if we see Rick Carlisle kind of ride the guys that are playing the better game in game number 3. You definitely need that game. You can't go down 0-3 in this one, especially with you coming home. Also excited to see what type of performance we could get from Pascal Siakam, because today it wasn't a good one. In the first part of their last series versus the Milwaukee Bucks, he was phenomenal. Like, he was unguardable through the first 3 games, and the Knicks have made it so very difficult for him. And the biggest, or not the biggest storyline, but the weirdest storyline right now is Pascal Siakam shooting 44% from the free throw line in the playoffs. I'm going to look real quick because I'm here at the computer what he shot in the regular season from the free throw line. I promise you it wasn't 44%. Today's game he missed 2. It's like back to back. He shot 74% in the regular season. Career, he's 76%. So to be in the playoffs right now and shooting 40% is just odd. Just really is. Mouse Turner also had a struggle of a game after being phenomenal in game number 1. It's one that you want. And I feel the same way about game number 1 if you're Indy. You know, you had some questionable calls go against you, but in game number 2, you were also there as well. So that's all my thoughts about this game. I got to go back and I don't rewatch games fully, but like I want to see exactly what was happening when the Knicks went on that huge run and rewatch the clutch moments games to see exactly what Indy was doing in those last couple minutes offensively. Because my naked eye, the first watch around, I was not impressed. I want to go to the OKC versus Dallas series because this was a super fun game. I ended up being a blowout, but halfway through the third quarter, it was very close. It's a weird stat I read this morning on Twitter that I had to bring up on the podcast. Dallas has never won a game one, and Coach Jason Kidd's 3-year tenure. Sorry, which makes no sense because they've gone on to win 3 of the 4 series that they lost game one in. So it's like, okay, we lose game one. That's okay. We're the Dallas Mavericks. We've done that over the last couple of seasons. We still walk out victorious. But I didn't like what I saw. Again, game one, let's overreact a little bit, I guess. Luka Doncic was not moving well. It was at 19 total points on this one. Him and Kyrie Irving combined for 36 points. Or was it? No, they combined for 39 points. And in the last series, Kyrie was giving you 39 by himself. Or Luka could give you 37. You know what I'm saying? So for both of them to combine for 37 or 39, it's just not going to cut it because they don't have as much variance as some of these other teams. Like they need their top 2 guys to really look like top 2 guys. And in the last series, they did for the most part. You can argue that Kyrie Irving was the better player, especially when we look at those last couple games because Luka was dealing with this sprained knee. And the way he was limping around in this court, and to watch Shea hunt him from the first possession of the game, by the way, just hunt him. And I don't know if that's just because of the injury or was that the game plan before the injury. They hunted Luka Doncic. And even before the game tipped off, he's sitting on the stanchion of the rim. The camera's paying in on him and he looks at his knee and he smacks it around a little bit. And I'm like, oh, this ain't looking good. And well, he didn't look good, especially because a lot of the shots that he ends up taking, and this is whether he's healthy or not, end up being like step back contested 3-point shots. And a lot of the shots felt like they were short. And I'm sure that has a lot to do with that knee not having the same bounce that it had. And let's be real, Luka Doncic is not a player that has a ton of bounce. So no matter what I say right now, I don't think any of it matters if Luka Doncic is not healthy or playing to the caliber that we know he can be. Because for the entirety of his career so far, he has been a playoff riser. But if his knee is messed up, it's not ideal. We talked about them being in the game halfway through the third quarter. Where things really shifted for the OKC Thunder is when Josh Giddey went to the bench and Isaiah Jokic checked in. And the Dallas Mavericks were on a 12-4 run before that happened. They were down by, I think, 9 points. They came all the way back. They hit some big shots from PJ Washington in that right corner. And like, okay, we're still in this game, even though Luka's not having it. Isaiah Joe comes into the court and everything shifts. And it got me thinking about, like, I feel like every team, even the most perfectly constructed teams in basketball are going to have their kryptonite because no team can be perfect. And it got me thinking about the games that I've watched recently, specifically post-deadline for the Dallas Mavericks. Could I pinpoint something that might be the kryptonite? Again, this is just me speculating. I have not gone back to rewatch all these games I'm going to talk about, but kind of went to rewatch some of the moments that I remember off the top of my mind. Could the Dallas Mavericks kryptonite just strictly be a 5-out offense? Kenny, what makes you say that? Specifically without Maxi Kleber, by the way, because Maxi Kleber was huge in the last series and now he's not there. He just stretches the floor and he can guard multiple positions. And without him, let me go through this. These are counting the games that matter because the last 2 games of the season, the Dallas Mavericks already knew what seed they were going to be, so they weren't playing anybody. So they lost by like 40 points here, 32 points. That doesn't matter. Their last 5 real losses when they were going for their playoff seeding. The last one went against the Golden State Warriors. This is their last real loss of the season. And I vividly remember watching this game and the run that the Warriors went on. It had Potts, it had Moody, it had Draymond is not a shooter, don't get me wrong, but he's a guy that creates for others from the perimeter. That's what I mean by that. When I say 5-out, I don't necessarily mean that everybody on the court is Klay Thompson. But when they went on the run, and it was a slight run because the game ended up being like a 3 to 4 point win. It wasn't like they got destroyed in this one. But the run that the Warriors went on that got them that win was them going a little bit smaller and having 5 guys that at least are a threat to shoot. Don't mean that they are great shooters, but at least a threat to shoot. Before that, the game that they lost before that was to this OKC Thunder team. Again, a team that's running 5 shooters all of the game. There's not a single minute where there's not 5 shooters. Because even when Jay Will comes on the court, he banged in with 2 threes last night. They're always going to have 5 shooters on the court because Busy don't play. The game before that they lost was the Indiana Pacers, who have Miles Turner, who I just mentioned in the last segment, that he's been having a phenomenal series by his standard. Again, tonight he wasn't very good. But another team that's going to play 5-out, at least with their main lineup. Like Ajax comes in and then no longer 5-out. But I don't remember in this one if Jason or Jalen Smith was the 5, or was it Ajax after Ajax took those minutes? Regardless. Before that, this one doesn't really fit my narrative. If you say that the Philadelphia 76ers was a loss, there was no Joel Embiid there. They started Mo Bamba, but Mo Bamba only played 12 minutes, and then it was B-Ball Paul. B-Ball Paul is not a stretcher, but he did go 1 for 1 from three in this game. So maybe it does fit. And then before that, it was the Boston Celtics with a healthy Kristaps Porzingis. So Isaiah Joe comes into this court, and it's like, what do we do? Because from the very beginning, from tip-off, the first possession of the game, we saw Daniel Gafford guarding Josh Giddey, which is no surprise. I think a lot of people expected that. But if you look at the last series, the Pelicans, it took them quite some time for them to completely buy into the fact that we want our center guarding Josh Giddey, because they thought that maybe it was just better to have Chet being guarded by the big man. I don't really know. Some teams kind of don't start off this way exactly, but the Dallas Mavericks won't play no games. They said, Daniel Gafford, you're guarding Josh Giddey, and that just makes it more difficult, right? Daniel Gafford's a rim protector. I think he had three really, really good blocks in this game, but soon as it turns into being Isaiah Joe on the court, now we have Daniel Gafford. He's got to slide back to guard Chet, and Chet was rolling very well when they blitzed it. He was popping when they didn't, and it just makes it harder for a guy like Daniel Gafford. It makes it harder for a guy like Derek Lively. And Derek Lively went to his post-game interview, and he said that part of their scheme today was to switch a lot of the stuff. And then guess what Shai Gilgeous-Alexander did when he saw that switch? It was a cook session. So the offense of the OKC Thunder is just so phenomenal. And they might have found it. Again, we're talking about game number 1 of a 7-game series. Jason Kidd just got his extension. I do want to say Jason Kidd is at least a good coach. So I'm expecting in game number 2, they try to remedy that a little bit. But Daniel Gafford felt kind of slow in this one. He even missed so many shots. Like, this man at one point was pushing Wilt for the most consecutive made shots in an NBA season. And in this one, there was too many times where he got the ball. And I don't want to say he panicked, because he's an NBA player who's been in these positions before. But I felt like he made his decision to go up just a little bit earlier than he normally would. And that caused some misses. It caused a big block from Chet Holmgren. But it's just cool to see a team like OKC, the youngest team in basketball, to go out there and dominate a game like this. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander ended up being number 2 in MVP. We'll talk about that later in the episode. But he looked like an MVP in this one. He got a good whistle. I will say that. There was one play where he kicked somebody in the mid area. That might have been Derrick Jones Jr. He kicked him in the mid area, and it was like, nah, Derrick Jones Jr., that is your foul. But as many people I saw complaining about the whistle, I want everybody to know that's not why the Dallas Mavericks lost this game. It don't matter what the whistle says if Luka Doncic has 19 points. He's one of the greatest players in basketball. How many teams that have a usage player like this can survive a game where their best player has 19 points and inefficient 19 points? It just doesn't happen. Like, that's part of the thing about building a team around a guy that has the ball this much, that a lot of the times if he's having a bad game, you're going to lose. Especially if the guy that's your number 2 in Kyrie Irving is also not having a ridiculous performance. And that's what happened in game number 1. Now, the problem with all of this is, like, sometimes you get to the playoffs, you have a game, and then you have a 3-day break between, or 2-day break. This series is game, break, game, break, game, break. It's every other game or every other day. So Luka doesn't even have a lot of time to really rest. And when he was asked about it, he said that he doesn't think a single day is going to help him. He said it probably will take it to the offseason for him to really heal up. That's a little bit frightening for me. OKC just looks great. And the underrated part, I talked about how good that offense looked. They are still the number 1 defense in the postseason. We saw a series against the Orlando Magic and the Cleveland Cavaliers where those teams were struggling to put up 90 points. Somehow the OKC Thunder are still a better defense than those teams in the postseason. And they still have a top 3 offense. This team is dangerous. And again, we're talking about a 1-0 series. They have not been pushed just yet, by the way. Other than game number 1 versus the Pelicans, they have not been pushed. And I'm waiting to see when it happens, because it's inevitable. They're not about to sweep the whole playoffs. They're going to lose a game eventually. And I wonder what's going to be the reason for it. Will it just be a poor shooting night? Would it be another team exploiting one of their deficiencies? Would it be, because like even the deficiency that everybody talks about, the rebounding aspect, they won the rebounding battle by a wide margin in this one. Like, they got a few second chance points. You're like, oh, you know what I'm saying? I think Shaq had that one dunk, and you're just like, that's a 7-foot dude. He didn't even jump to tip dunk that one. So, huge game for the OKC Thunder. I'm worried about Luka Doncic's knee, but I will move on to the next series. That is the Celtics versus the Cavs. Now, I do want to say, I have not talked about the Celtics much this playoff run, right? I think the only time we really talked about them was when the Miami Heat hit those 23 threes. That's like it. Because they've just been dominant every other game. Like, every other game that they've played, other than when the Miami Heat set a franchise record for most threes in a playoff game. Other than that game, they have been mopping the floor with everybody. And game number 1 against the Cavaliers was no different. In this one, they shot 6 of 22 from 3 in the first half and still went into halftime up by 10. What? Jason Tatum had 18 points on 19 shots. Still walked out of there feeling amazing about the series so far. Derek White, I remember 2 years ago, they're in that series against the Miami Heat. Game 6 and 7. Game 6 and 7. Derek White, I won't use the word unplayable, but Derek White's kind of afraid to shoot the ball. And when he did shoot, well, hell, he was breaking everything. And now to see him have a playoff game, or I guess this entire playoff run so far, he's been, I don't know, Michael Jordan-esque. No. He's been hitting 3-point shots. He's been, I don't want to be hyperbolic, but he has 7 3-pointers in game number 1. And in the first series, you could argue that he was one of the 2 most impactful players in that series. I just love to see the progression from him. We're talking about 2 seasons ago versus the Miami Heat, where he could not play because he didn't want to shoot. And when he did shoot, he missed everything. And now he's one of the more deadly 3-point shooters. I think I saw he has the best true shooting percentage in the playoffs right now. And he's shooting hell of threes. It makes no sense. Tatum hasn't needed to do anything. And there's a lot of conversation around Tatum, and I'm kind of guilty of this as well, where I like watched them. I watched the entire series last. I watched game number 1, and I'm kind of disappointed is not the word. I just don't feel great about his offensive punch, right? That's how I felt in real time watching game number 1 versus the Cavaliers. Like, man, Tatum, 7 of 19, is not looking fluid. Next round, when they win this series, they're going to go against the Knicks more likely than not, and they'll probably win that series, and they got to go against one of those Western Conference teams, and all of those teams out there that are competing are really, really good, right? You can't really have this many performances where this is the case. In the first round of the playoffs versus the Miami Heat, there was only one game where he was the leading scorer in the game. Like, that's Jason Tatum. That's top 10-ish player in basketball, Jason Tatum. That's maybe all NBA first team Jason Tatum, and no lower second team Jason Tatum. And he led the series in scoring one time, and guess what? He tied with somebody else. I think him and Derek White both put up 22 in one of those games. 22. That was it. Right? And that was my real-time reaction. And I was like, I gotta go back. Because that doesn't feel right. So I went back to watch specifically the third quarter, the first quarter and third quarter with Jason Tatum. And the man is just seeing so many bodies. And that was something in real time. Sometimes I watch a game and my critical thinking cap go off. He's seeing so many different bodies. And then it started off with Max Strus as the main primary defender. But anytime he touched the ball, there's another 2 different sets of eyes looking at him and not attacking him completely. But it is just extremely difficult for Jason Tatum to get a shot off. Now, the counterpoint to that is like, what star player is not seeing that, right? Tatum, what star player is not seeing that? And so far, because the team is so damn deep, it hasn't mattered. But I thought everything else around Tatum's game, other than him scoring, has been great. Because when those other two sets of eyes are locked in on him, he's making the right play 95% of the time. The defense has been phenomenal. The only thing I want is potentially for him to take over. But guess what? He hasn't even had a situation where he needed to take over. That's how dominant the team is. Like, I'm not a guy that really questions Jason Tatum as entirety, because I've seen him go into Philly and have a game 7 where he dropped 50, or go into a game 6 back against the wall and put up 45. Like, I've seen him do big time stuff and big time moments. But a lot of people look back to that finals appearance versus the Warriors, and everything that I just said about there's different sets of eyes looking at him and attacking him time and time again. That's what the Warriors did. Draymond Green has been very candid about their idea is to make it super tough on Tatum and say, Jaylen Brown, we don't really trust you like that. So if you can beat us in a 7-game series, so be it. And that's how Jaylen Brown ended up having the better series than Jason Tatum. And it got people on Twitter talking about, is Jason Tatum even the best player on the team because Jaylen Brown averaged this in the finals, when in reality, Jaylen Brown's, the amount of looks he got was a third of what Tatum got. The Cavaliers just don't have the firepower to keep up. Like, the first 2 possessions of the game was 3-pointer Boston Celtics, 3-pointer Boston Celtics. And you know how they always do the check-in, right? They do the check-in with the coach being mic'd up. And JB Bickerstaff immediately says, we're giving them exactly what we said we don't want to give them. Yeah. Lou Cornett is just a name I need to say, because when he was a Bull, the worst coach in NBA history, Jim Boylan, said Lou Cornett reminds him of Robert Horry. He said that, by the way. Like, that's a real quote. Go look it up. And even the broadcasters, Stacey King and Adam Amin, had to laugh at it. Or was it Neil Funk was still there? Neil Funk had to laugh at it, because what the hell is he talking about? Luke Cornett has been phenomenal as a Celtic, bro. First play he gets into the game, immediately gets a block, just holding it down. So shout out to Luke Cornett, Peyton Pritchard, and all the guys. I'm waiting for the team that's gonna push the Celtics. I don't even know if it's gonna happen in the Eastern Conference. The conference finals, they'll get pushed, but I still believe that the Celtics is just gonna be the better team. This portion of the podcast is brought to you by goodr. What is goodr, you ask? They are $25 polarized sunnies. Like talk to me. How I'm looking. goodr sunglasses are no slip, no bounce, all polarized and all fun. They have over 50,000 5-star reviews. They got a 1-year warranty. They got a 30-day cash back guarantee. Like, come on, man. Did I mention that they're carbon net neutral company? Their sunnies, again, are polarized and they're only $25. And because they're always releasing new colors and new styles, it's gonna be something there for pretty much everybody. They got some wacky names like the back 9 blackout. I'm kind of dressed for a back 9. Flamingos on a booze cruise and donkey goggles. Those are just 3 examples of some of the names. They're lightweight, stylish, and they do not slip off your face. They're perfect for cycling, running, golfing. If the sun is involved, the goodr sunnies can get the job done. Now, if you want to support the show, goodr has a deal for the Kenny Beecham podcast listeners. If you go to goodr.com/Kenny, you could get free shipping on your order. And remember, there's a 30-day money-back guarantee, so there's a 100% satisfaction rate. So go to goodr.com/Kenny so you can get free shipping on your goodr order. Let's quickly talk about Wolves versus Denver. I'm actually so surprised that Jamal Murray only got a $100,000 fine. He actually didn't get fined for doing the money sign either. As far as we know, it was just $100,000 for throwing the heated pad on the court, which is unacceptable. I think we can all agree because that just puts so many people in danger. They said the reason he didn't get a suspension because where he threw the heated pad, nobody was in danger of stepping on it or whatever. That's BS. You got to hold your emotions. Like you've been here before. You know, it's not the first game that you've lost. Maybe he's frustrated because Jaden McDaniels and Nikhil Alexander-Walker has been on his ass this entire playoffs, or the fact that he's not looking like the player that we normally see him be. He's definitely hurt out there, but that can only get you so far as an excuse. The Minnesota Timberwolves have been so ridiculous. Like, I'll be honest, I picked against them in the first round and the second round. It had nothing to do with them. It didn't. I was overthinking with the Sun series, just thinking of and we're gonna talk about this with the ASKKB segment, by the way. Looking at the previous games and seeing how the Suns played against the Timberwolves, I was like, okay, this makes sense to pick the Suns. Obviously, they got swept. And then looking at the defending champions and how, even though they didn't look amazing versus the Lakers, they ended up winning that series and they are the defending champions. And I've seen them be able to turn it up because last year in the regular season, they had a stretch where they lost like 5 in a row towards the end of the season. And you're like, oh my God. And then they got to the playoffs and it was dominance. But last episode, I mentioned to y'all that this Minnesota Timberwolves team is objectively the best team this Denver Nuggets team has ever seen. And you could tell. Jamal Murray has not had a good series. Nikola Jokic had 39-9 in game number 1. And then in game number 2, he was bad. Like his 39-9, I was like, damn, that's a rough game for Jokic. It's kind of crazy when you think about it. But in game number 2, it wasn't even that. And that was without Rudy Gobert being there. It was funny to see Rudy Gobert accept the DPOY award and make a little jokey joke about how he's thinking about not playing for game number 3 because they look so good in game number 2. But I've always said that they were contenders, right? I went on Run It Back, FanDuel TV, and this was 3 months into the season or so. Chandler Parsons asked me, or is it Lou Will? One of them two asked me if I believed the Minnesota Timberwolves were contenders. And I said yes. Like, there are some things about this team that I do not like. That was like their clutch offense and the fact that they have a league average offense in the regular season. But other than that, like, the defense can hold his own in most series. And if we have a couple great games from Anthony Edwards, they can win almost any series. They didn't like that. They didn't think that was correct. But here we are, right? Here we are 2 games away from being in the conference finals. I'm not counting the Denver Nuggets out at all. You know what I'm saying? Like, that is a really talented team. But if Murray's not looking like, he don't even look like he's 60%. I don't know how far we can really get. The odds have shifted dramatically. Before the season started, the Minnesota Timberwolves were a plus 6,600 to win the finals. Now they're plus 300. You got a FanDuel Sportsbook. They are a plus 300 to win the championship, and that's only behind the Celtics, who are minus 135. Again, it's crazy to have a team be minus, but it's late in the season. The only other time I've really seen teams have a minus odds to win a championship before the season started was like the 17 Warriors, or like minus 135. They might have been minus 135 as well. but the Minnesota Timberwolves are second in odds to win the championship. And that was just something I did not see coming. Today, we found out that Nikola Jokic is our MVP. Could not have happened at the worst time. Could not have happened at the worst time. The brother is down 2-0 in a series, and he's got to go on to TNT. And Shaq say some stupidness while he's in the midst of having the roughest series of his life. I guess it's better to do it thin and not have him raising his MVP trophy when they're down in a series. But it is what it is. His third MVP puts him in the conversations with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Michael Jordan, LeBron James, Bill Russell, Larry Bird, Wilt Chamberlain, Magic Johnson, Nikola Jokic, and Moses Malone, like an elite class. It's got a lot of people talking on Twitter. Where does this get him ranked as of right now? If he retired right now, where is he ranked? I saw some people say as high as like 12, 13. I don't think I go that high because I don't have like a real personal ranking. I'm definitely more of a range guy. So this guy is either he's between number 3 and number 6 and so on. All of the guys that are in that range for me have multiple championships. So I feel like he needs to get more under his belt as far as championship goes. But I do believe this is one of the most dominant offensive runs we've seen from a player. But all of that could be coming to an end in like 4 days. Technically, like if they get swept, I don't know what to tell you, bro. But it could be done in about 4 days or so. But I've been impressed with the Minnesota Timberwolves. I think the coolest thing about it is that they have the number 1 offense in the postseason. They were the 17th ranked offense in the regular season, number 1 in the postseason. Number 1. And actually, let's go get us to our very first ASKKB. This comes from Hattie. I don't know if I pronounced your name. I met you in Houston. I still don't know how to pronounce your name. So shout out to you, Sammy. What's one thing throughout the playoffs that you have learned is way more important than you previously thought than prior years, especially about a team? I'm actually going to flip this on its head a little bit and say, like, I put a lot of stake into the regular season. First of all, I just love basketball, so it don't matter. It could be a preseason game, a summer league game. I'm invested. But I take a lot of stock in the regular season because that's like how we determine what we think is going to happen in the postseason, right? This postseason, I've had to throw out so many things from the regular season, making it feel like it don't even matter. The Minnesota Timberwolves being the 17th ranked offense in the regular season, they get into the postseason and being number 1. Are we serious? The Minnesota Timberwolves being the 27th ranked clutch team in basketball, they get to the postseason, they're perfect. What did I just watch those 82 games for? Other than the enjoyment factor. So that was one thing. I guess I can't put that much stake in the regular season anymore. But the one thing I did learn that is way more important, and this has kind of shifted throughout the course or the entirety of my life as an NBA fan. We had our eras where the small ball lineup, the death lineup, the Golden State Warriors got everybody in basketball thinking that was the only way to hoop. And nowadays, you kind of need a good to great big to really be competitive. I know there are some teams out there that don't really have, like the Dallas Mavericks have 2 solid bigs, but they're not great bigs. But like Shaq, amazing. Luka, Jokic, amazing. Both of the big, all 3 of the bigs in Minnesota, amazing. Jared Allen has been injured, but amazing big. Like it goes on and on. Porzingis when he's healthy, amazing big. Miles Turner's having a phenomenal postseason so far. And hell, Isaiah Hartenstein, the counting stats don't tell you how impactful he is. And it's just in previous years, you saw teams get to the last 5 minutes. It's like, what's our version of the death lineup? What's our Jeff Green? Can you run center for us? An entire team decided to trade everybody on the team that was over 6'6" because everybody wanted to be small. That was partially because they wanted space for Russell Westbrook, but still. And nowadays, it's like, hold on. Is the twin center thing a thing? The Cavs brought it back. They won 50 games with it. And then the Minnesota Timberwolves said, we're going to snatch that because we're more experienced and we got actual Hall of Famers as our bigs right now, and we going to elevate it. So just having at least a big core that is really, really talented goes a long way. The next one comes from Kyle. Kyle says, what does OKC do in the offseason if they make the conference finals? Do they run it back with the same squad or do they cash in on their picks? Now, they have over 15 draft picks over the next 5 years or so. I think it's hard to really even say because we haven't even seen somebody expose an issue, right? So it would be very easy for me to say they need to go out there and go get a good backup center, Andre Drummond type of center, because in the regular season they were one of the worst they were one of the worst rebounding teams, and in the postseason they were too. But that's not the case. In the postseason They're fine with their rebounding. So even the idea of going to get that secondary big is not that impactful anymore because the biggest holder we thought they had in their lineup is not really a hole in their lineup anymore. So I don't know where they go with it. I love the roster though, right? Like a lot of people are speculating they should go out and throw 4 first-round picks for Kevin. And no. I love this young team. And though progression is not linear, I would expect these guys to just continue to grow together. I mean, Jalen Williams had a pretty bad first half last night. He ended up leaving the game with an injury. And then the fourth quarter came around. He had like 9 straight points. Like that is the type of secondary option I want to keep. I'm not a fan of going in and buying, going to get a superstar. Hell, their trade deadline acquisition, Gordon Hayward, the man has not scored in the postseason just yet. Cardio king. So I don't know what the answer is. I would steer on the continuity thing. Sam Presti kind of said that before the season started, that like it doesn't make sense for us to make any big trades now because we don't even know we have. And I think they know that they have a really great team, that the vibes are super high. The city loves them. They have a superstar who just ended up number 2 in MVP and everything. So let's not mess that up with bringing the idea of bringing in somebody that's more established, because the young thing has not mattered so far. The NBA playoffs have tipped off, but it's not too late for you to get in on the action with FanDuel. FanDuel is the only U.S. sportsbook with over 5 million 5-star reviews. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any $5 winning bet. That's $150 to use on same-game parlays, live bets, championship futures, and many more things. There's no better place to bet on all the playoff action than America's #1 sportsbook. Just go to FanDuel.com/Kenny to get started. FanDuel, official partner of the NBA. The next question comes from a guy whose name is Don't Trade for Trey. What realistic trade options are there for the Lakers in the offseason? Can they really make a move with their assets to be competitive, or is it impossible to compete with Denver, Minnesota, whatever? Is it impossible? Absolutely not. But we talked about it last episode about a window being closed. We say that the Clippers window is closed. The Lakers window is not necessarily closed. I would be kind of crazy to say that. But I don't know if there's anybody on the market this season, right? Unless you could just pry a team away from a player. I don't think there's anybody on the market this season that A, is obtainable for you, and B, would put you over the hump versus some of these other teams. Your name is Don't Trade for Trey. If Trae Young goes to the Lakers, yes, they're a better team, but do we look at them going against Denver in a 7? Do we look at them going against Minnesota, OKC in a 7 and say, this is the team that will be winning? It's hard for me to get there. So I actually don't like any of the big trade options for y'all. And part of that is y'all don't really have that many assets. All those 3 first-round picks could be interesting. There's a real conversation around whether it's worth investing in that for Bron when he's 40. But like a DeJounte Murray, Trae Young thing don't really interest me. Like Donovan Mitchell, mock-ups have been out there, but I feel like you could get more for Donovan Mitchell than 3 Lakers first-rounders, Austin Reeves, Rui Hachimura. Like if I'm the Cavs, I'd rather just not take that trade and send him somewhere else. So I don't think there's any really good options out there. Rob Pelinka has made some good trades throughout the course of his tenure. Now, he's got some bad ones too. He knows more than I do, and maybe he does find that guy in the Lakers or raising the Larry O'Brien next season, but I doubt it. The next one comes from Aiden. How we feeling about Shaq straight up telling Jokic to his face that he didn't deserve the MVP? That was one of the lamest things I've seen. It just was. There's a time and place for everything. And when you're rewarding somebody for being crowned the best player in basketball for the 3rd time in his career, that is not the place where you tell somebody that. Now, if we go down the line and if you Shaquille O'Neal, and you definitely need to tell Jokic this. This is something that you can't keep to yourself, or hell, you can't even wait till Jokic is off the call to say it. If you did really need to tell Jokic this, there's better times than when he's celebrating the fact that he won. Hey, Yoke, great season, but you don't deserve this award. It's crazy to me. It was very Kanye Taylor Swift. It's just time and place. And Shaq, listen, he's my favorite big of all time. He just is, right? There's something to be said about him just disliking centers in general. Jokic has an opportunity to take his spot in the top 10 eventually. Again, I just mentioned a couple seconds ago where he's not there yet, but with 3 MVPs and is getting you close. And throughout the course of Shaq's career post-playing, He's been very, very critical of all the bigs. Joel, Dwight Howard, Boogie Cousin. No, Boogie's the one that he wasn't very critical of. But Yoke, and he's not critical of Yoke. Don't get me wrong, he's not critical of Yoke, but I don't know. Threatened? Maybe that's the word. Shaq, please invite me back to your podcast, brother. I'm just trying to talk to you. Tall Kid says, how do you talk about basketball so much and not get burnt out? I mean, I treat it like a job. Believe it or not, I am not talking basketball if there's not a camera in front of me. Like I do this for work. My day-to-day life, when I'm away from this, I'm not. Hey, I got other hobbies, dog. You see how I'm dressed? I play golf today. I should have probably buttoned this up. I play golf today. You know, I'm getting into reading and stuff. And that makes it seem like I've never read before. But quick tangent, because we got just a little bit of time here. When I went on First Take, first of all, it's just a lot going on, right? Just a full live broadcast is something I've experienced tons of bits of it, but most of it's like virtual or smaller productions. This is ESPN, whatever. And there are a lot of things I took away from this time. But the thing I was most impressed with was Molly's ability to read the teleprompter. Now, she's been in the game for a long time. She's one of the best in the game. But how unbothered she was. And you're like, Kenny, you're stupid. The only thing you have to do is read. How unbothered she was with new read. Like one of the things had an error in it during our break. They had to quickly change it up, and she adjusted on the fly, and you wouldn't be able to tell. Like, that is professionalism. That is just being great at your craft. Some of y'all may notice I have dyslexia. So reading in general is just really, really tough for me. And I was in that room and I was thinking, one day in my professional life, I might have to read off a teleprompter. I can't be afraid of it. I have to be prepared for it. So now I'm attempting to read a little bit more. And it's not easy, bro. It's really not easy. Like, it's been one of those things that it hasn't hindered me in my life just yet. So I haven't tackled it. You know what I'm saying? And dyslexia is not something I could just work towards and it goes away. But I can just get more familiar and more comfortable with it. Like, if you've been watching for a time, you know these stories. But even, I think in this episode I did it, where Pascal Siakam's free throw percentage, I misread those numbers like twice. That's part of, you know what I'm saying? That has nothing to do with the original question. But there are just things that I do outside of when this camera is on that make it so that when the camera's on, I have so much fun with it. Burnout is very real, but it has nothing to do with basketball necessarily. It has more to do with the profession of just content creation. Like, it has nothing to do with what the content is about. The very last question comes from Cannon. Brandon Ingram possible trade destinations after Shams came out with the discourse between him and Willie Green. If you didn't see it, there was a disagreement between Willie Green and Brandon Ingram. They said it was minor, but we talked about it a few episodes ago, how David Griffin said they're going to be aggressive and not be complacent, and they did not extend Brandon Ingram, or they don't plan to extend Brandon Ingram. So writing is on the wall, Brandon Ingram is gone. So I went out and I was like, okay, what can we do? The problem with the Brandon Ingram trade is that there would be way more teams interested in Brandon Ingram if the Pelicans' idea wasn't to stay competitive, right? If we're trading Brandon Ingram for some draft picks, then hell yeah, like there's going to be multiple teams, like a team like the Grizzlies. They have like Marcus Smart, Brandon Clark, Lou Cornett. They can make that money match immediately and some draft capital. But if we the Pelicans, why the hell would we do that? The Warriors can be interested. They got the money to match. They got a couple young players that could be interested in some draft capital. But if I'm the Pelicans, why the hell would I want that? The Pistons have all the cap space in the world and draft picks that matter because they suck. Why would I want that? The 76ers have 3 tradable first-round picks, but no real players to attach them to. Why would I want that? So it's really like, these are the options. Derrick Jones Jr. swap. Everybody's talked about it. You know, give one of the point guards over here, you get a wing over here. I think the Trae Young one is interesting too, though, because in this case, you'll be a buyer, right? You'd be a buyer. It's not a 1-for-1. I'm not giving you what picks are involved or whatever. But if you're trading for Trae Young, who's under contract for the next couple seasons, and Brandon Ingram is going to the last year of his deal, you have to throw some more on top of that. I don't know if that's Dyson Daniels. I don't know if that's just draft picks, because they still do have 2 first-round picks from the Drew Holiday trade, and they got 1 more first-round pick that they can either take this year from the Lakers or take next year from the Lakers. So they can do a Brandon Ingram buy deal and not infringe on their own draft capital, which is interesting. A Darius Garland swap could be interesting if Donovan Mitchell say, hey, I want to be in Cleveland, but I don't really like this double guard thing. Or buy in on Donovan Mitchell if he becomes available. Now, you have to convince Donovan Mitchell to sign this extension. I don't know if he would do that in New Orleans, but I think that's some interesting thing. And then because of the draft picks and the younger players between Jordan Hawkins, Dyson Daniels, and so on and so forth, because of those players on their roster, if Devin Booker becomes available, I would buy in on Devin Booker. Again, we don't know if he will become available, but I did read a rumor a couple days ago that he might be. It's kind of it, unless they want to do a sign and trade to bring DeMar DeRozan and then let Brandon Ingram come to Chicago. I would welcome that. I think that's where we end today's episode, y'all. If you did enjoy it, be sure to leave it a like. The next time we talk to each other, man, like no joke, it's kind of crazy how quick these series go. The next time we talk to each other would be after game 4 of Pacers Knicks and after game 4 of Nuggets Timberwolves. So I don't think any of those series, I think the Knicks series could end in a sweep. Not likely, but it could. I don't think we're doing a funeral for a team that night, but we could be. Leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see y'all then.